Alright, I'm back with another Destiny 2 video, and while I have not run the dungeon yet, I am going to run it for the first time tonight because my in-laws were in town all weekend. I do know one thing I don't like about the dungeon already, and I don't think this is going to be terribly controversial. The dungeon itself seems fine. It seems a bit shorter, a bit on the easier side, which I'm totally okay with. I don't think that's one of the main issues. What I do think is an issue is what they did with the loot pool. Namely, the fact that they decided to fill the remaining 2 slots to bring it up to 6 total weapons with the 7th Seraph auto rifle and the 7th Seraph carbine, yeah, that's what it's called, and the 7th Seraph revolver. These are 2 weapons that join the brand new Tex Mechanica weapons, which are the ones everyone is going after: the scout rifle, the double action grenade launcher, the sidearm that can roll Desperado, and I don't know the 4th one. Is there a machine gun? I think there's a machine gun. But those are obviously the weapons that everyone is there for because they are brand new, or at least new concepts, like a legendary DMT style weapon. The problem here is that this is kind of an expanded version of what they did with Duality. So Duality had 4 new weapons that were they were themed to the dungeon. They were really powerful, like Storm Chaser was one of the best DPS weapons, period. And they were joined by 2 Season of Opulence weapons. There was the fusion rifle and the machine gun. And in that case, that felt like they had just taken, because that season brought back all these other opulence weapons, it felt like they had just taken 2 that they probably just should have put in the season and threw them over into Duality as extra drops. And well, it wasn't great. It was still like, okay, these weapons are sunsets. There's nowhere else to get them right now. Also, these 2 weapons could be crafted, so they could be crafted with enhanced perks, and like the way the patterns dropped there was terrible. That was another issue entirely and had to be nerfed. I don't even know if I got nerfed enough, but there was at least like some rationale there. Here with Spire, it's not the same situation. So there are 6 seasonal weapons and 4 Aquilos weapons that are in the season. There aren't 2 more Aquilos weapons to throw in the dungeon. There was only 4 in the first place. So they're now taking the Season of the Worthy Seraph weapons and putting them in there. They generate Warmind cells. They gave them the same intrinsic trait as the Aquilos weapons. The problem here is twofold. First, the minor problem is you can't craft them, so they're probably just going to be worse than the Aquilos weapons, even though they're different slots and fill different purposes. Like, you can't craft them, you can't craft any of the dungeon weapons. But the main problem is these weapons were never sunset. And not only were they never sunset, they have been pretty much available in the game in some form forever. Like, at first they were, the primary season of the Worthy weapons, and like you could still have roles back then that you can still use today, because that was the last season, like, where weapons were not sunset. So if you had Worthy weapons then, you could have them now. The other issue is that they just never went anywhere. They were in World Drops for a while, and then they were in Dares of Eternity. Up until literally last season, you could get these Seraph weapons in Dares of Eternity. And they just took them out of Dares of Eternity, and they changed the Dares loot pool for this season, and now they are in the dungeon. When we get to like the reuse of weapons and reissuing of weapons, I'm usually on the side of like being pretty generous about stuff like that. Like, okay, if something's been sunset, like oftentimes if things have been sunset, you're excited to see them back. Everyone's excited for when the Black Armory weapons return, or when the Dawn weapons return. Everybody did like the Opulence weapons returning. But in this case, you were taking weapons that were never sunset at all and never not available at all, and putting them as a dungeon reward. And with the Aquilos weapons, the Aquilos weapons have been reissued 3 times, which is not great, admittedly. Those were fixed rolls, and then they were reissued with random rolls, and then now they've been reissued a 3rd time with better rolls and an origin trait. But the 7th Seraph weapons, I feel like it's a little different when it's a dungeon loot pool, where you are expecting kind of top ends, higher tier loots that you are unable to get anywhere else. The one caveat here is I don't know exactly all of the perks that those weapons can roll now in this new reissued form. The API is down, so I can't look them up on light.gg. So it is possible, I suppose, that there are just some absolutely nutty rolls on those two weapons, but everyone running the dungeon, I have not seen anyone showing off their carbine or service revolver drops. Everyone's just showing off the Tex Mechanica ones. So I don't even think that's like the thing. The other issue is that it's not just that they brought them back and that's like whatever, low effort or, you know, giving us weapons that we've been able to have and farm for years already. It's also that it actively makes the loot pool worse. It's actually worse than if they had just not put those weapons in at all, because it is gunking up the loot pool because you want the new weapon drops. So if you have an encounter, I don't know the exact encounter distribution, but like if an encounter has a chance of giving you the scout rifle, a piece of armor, or a 7th Seraph carbine, you know, if you're getting a weapon, it's now a coin flip between the weapon you really want and the weapon you have like 4 copies of and been able to farm for 4 years, even if it's got new perks. So it's muddying up the loot pool with these 4 new weapons that people want, and I would argue it is actively worse to have them in the pool at all than it is to just not have them and have a dungeon with 4 weapons. Like, I get the calculation Bungie made here is, I think Bungie is trying to put 6 weapons in a dungeon, so it makes it feel like it is worth this new sold separately payment system they have going on. I have my own issues with that, but like I think that's the judgment call they made. I think they got away with it in duality because of the reasons I said. Those weapons were sunset, you could craft them, and like it made a little bit more sense, and they were like thematic with the dungeon a little bit in the season, but these weapons just, it does not make sense to put these in the dungeon after they have been easily available for years and years and years. Just new perks and a new origin trait isn't going to do it, and it is actively making the dungeon loot pool worse by the fact that they're in there at all. So I don't know. I hope this is like a teachable moment for the dungeons. Like in a perfect world, they would just be able to make 6 weapons per dungeon, and we wouldn't have to deal with these 2 kind of bonus weird extra weapons that are dropping. But if you are going to have to do that, it's got to be something different than what they're doing with the 7th Seraph weapons. Like, you can't just pull them out of the Dares of Eternity pool and be like, now they're in the dungeon, now they're like elite loot. Like, that's not going to work, and nobody, you know, everyone has gotten 100 drops of these Seraph weapons at this point, and a couple new perks aren't really going to get people excited about them again, I don't believe. So that is one thing I hope they don't replicate in the future. I will have more in-depth thoughts on the dungeon itself once I've actually run it, and I got to get my circuit patterns down and learn how to farm this thing, because I want every piece of armor for all of the classes, and obviously all of the weapons, but mainly the armor. It's cowboy armor. I need that, obviously. Anyway, those are my kind of initial thoughts just on that specific situation to the dungeon, and we can, I don't know, there's a bazillion more things to talk about this season, but one thing at a time. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.